Hey guys, how's it going? Don't know why I keep asking you that. This is going to be my review of Kill and Eve Season 3 or Series 3, Episode 3. And the episode is called Meet and Have Biscuits. I don't actually know why it's called that. I never heard that line in the episode, or I never really saw any significance to that title, but I guess it must have been a line someone said somewhere and I just missed it. But yeah, this is a pretty enjoyable, fun episode with, again, quite a surprising development like halfway through it. So the big sort of plot point in this episode, on the Eve side anyway, is that obviously they've been continuing to investigate Kenny, and she's been working with like his like old like employers at the newspaper to try and crack the code that's on his phone, and they eventually do it in this episode, and the code is like cracked and it comes up as panda, the word panda, which Eve recognizes as like a code name for like this international like syndicate of like assassins, which has like a link to like the 12 as well. And so Eve comes up with the conclusion then someone from that organisation must have had Kenny killed, and that's who he was investigating. So they get Caroline involved, and actually one of the funny things in this episode is that right near the beginning of the episode, Caroline calls a meeting at her home, and it includes like Eve and also I think Phil's his name, like the editor of the newspaper, and she actually calls them to her bathroom without them realizing, and she's in the bath, and she has this funny line which is get over it, all my best thoughts come when I'm in the bath, which is great. So it's just getting more into like the eccentric nature of Caroline, and but her and like her assistant at the government, they start tracking down this accountant called, well, his name's Sergey officially, and he's meant to be like in his 80s or something and retired, but they know him as something else. Like Sergey's kind of like a code name sort of thing. But he's meant to be this accountant who has like ties to like the 12 and this international group. So the big plot point in this episode really is that they suspect that he's in London, so they're trying to get to him so they can potentially get some information out of him. And there's this whole it's quite an interesting episode because there's all these different like moving parts that somehow connect to one another, because they suspect then he's been like at one point laundering money sort of thing for like the Russians, but that's sort of unconfirmed, and at one point that's called into question, but he certainly has ties to them somehow. But the main reason they want to get to him is because he can like maybe give them answers. So they're able to like crack into like the like database into like their account system and remove money, and this is to like cut off their funding and to kind of cause a stir. So in another sort of like add-on, we see Constantine like being contacted by someone within this organization, basically saying, hey, you know, some like a huge sum of money has mysteriously disappeared from like the accounts. You need to investigate this. And Constantine, we get a little bit here and there with in this episode. He's still hanging around London, but the big side really builds to like the meeting with this accountant, and Eve and Caroline and the rest trying to crack this side of things to get answers. And Caroline really proves her worth at one point. Actually, there's this funny scene where she's like meant to be going on a date, and you've still got her daughter like staying with her, the one out of like Upstart Crow, and I think that this is just to show that she still keeps like secrets from her, because we later find out that it's not a date, then it's something to do with the case. But as far as her daughter is concerned, like Caroline's going out on the date. So I actually did enjoy a line from the daughter as she's leaving, where she says, don't mention Stalin to him. Stalin is strictly like third date material. She uses that line, which is just brilliant. It's just a smart little joke because of obviously the whole like Russian links and stuff with Caroline. So she goes on this date, and I think this episode there's actually quite a few scenes where we are meant to believe something else is going on, because we just see this scene and her leaving for what appears to be a date, so we assume that she's going on a date as well. And then she's at the bar and the guy doesn't show up, and you see her waiting there. So I've like the writers are cleverly like fooling us into thinking that she's there for a date, and the guy just doesn't show up. And the trick of the scene is that she actually is waiting for a guy, but it's a different guy from what we've meant to believe. So she starts leaving, and suddenly she turns and looks, and there's a guy there, and it turns out to be a guy who she knows from like 20 years back, and they haven't seen each other for 20 years. So Caroline like fakes sort of surprise, and it's like, oh my goodness, that sort of thing. And I'm assuming they're meant to be like ex-lovers, because they immediately like sort of go off together, which obviously we find out later this was a ploy. Caroline obviously knew he was going to be at this bar, and that's why she went there. And it turns out he's like within finance, he has like the connections, so he can actually like she can actually use him for information of where to get to like this accountant. So yeah, that's a nice character beat for Caroline. I'm actually really enjoying her this season. We're getting some good stuff with her here. So that was played really nice, and a nice reveal that she had that all planned out. And there's a good line from Eve later on, I think the next day or something, because Caroline actually like wakes up like drunk because she's gone off and had a bit of a night with this guy, and obviously for the purpose of the case, but she's like drunk in the morning, and Eve has to get her up. And Caroline kind of plays it like she's really upset about having to use like an old like confidant like that, And when she leaves, Eve like says to the other guy, he's like, yeah, I think she actually loves it, like using her influence in that way. So what actually happens is, and I'll bring Villeneuve into it here, because Villeneuve ends up going to London, and we're not sure why at first. There's a brilliant scene actually, I'll go through, because the plot's overset at this point. So we see Villeneuve in different places. So we see her in like this crazy sort of like kind of like toy shops with like sort of bears, and you hear like the teddy bears has their picnic song, and it's just this place where you've got all these different teddy bears, and they talk, and you can make them say things. And I just love this like Villeneuve just being freaked out by this, like just this crazy assassin just being like weirded out by this really bizarre sort of like toy shop. It's just in her mind, this is what perverse really is. And she has a great like line, this place is like psychopathic, which is just great. And she goes into like a booth at some point. It's like a telephone box, and she's just like recording these messages, and this doesn't really become clear what she's actually doing until later, but it seems to be related to Eve, because she keeps saying things like something like I think it's like it should have been you or something, or she keeps repeating the message anyway. I mean, at one point she's kind of saying, I think it's stuff like, oh yeah, she says a couple of times, I should have shot you in the head, obviously talking about the end of the previous season in Rome, basically saying she should have made sure she killed her. And then she ends the message by saying, I can't stop thinking about you, basically. So that's her passion, like giving in at the end. And she randomly shows up and confronts Eve on the bus later on. And they get into this thing where Eve initially just snaps and goes for her, and it's like this really physical. It's sort of quite cartoonish in a way, because they're slapping at each other, but it's just enough like levels of like physicality and believability, because they're both so sort of frantic. And Villeneuve's trying to reassure her, I'm not here for you, sort of thing. Because actually there's a scene earlier in the episode with her and Dasha where Dasha is trying to prod her towards Eve again, trying to like persuade her now's the time to go after Eve, and Villeneuve just says, I'm not ready for that yet. But so apparently she's not there for Eve, even though she's shown up on the bus. It's all part of like a tactic. And there's another previous scene where she's like gone into like this high end sort of like fragrance shop to get some like fancy perfume, and she's in like this gorgeous sort of suit, and again playing another like persona, playing this kind of like middle class kind of posh woman. Which is, yeah, she's doing herself up for Eve. That's the whole point of that scene. So yeah, they get into this thing on the bus, and again it's like this bizarre sort of sequence where at first they're fighting, and they're so frantic, and then they embrace each other and they kiss, but they do take like lumps out of each other. Both of them are like bruised quite badly. But as I said, that's when Villeneuve kind of says, I'm not here for you. So it makes you wonder who she is there for. And she ends up running off the bus, like she escapes. And at first I wondered if it was sort of in Eve's head, because it was such a bizarre scene, and you didn't really expect them to have a scene together like maybe this early. Um, so later on, it builds towards Carolyn and the other guy who she works with. They're on like a stakeout, and they go to like the headquarters where they're expecting this guy. Um, and again, because he's like a pensioner, like an old guy, it's quite an amusing scene where he walks out and he sees them, and he knows like Carolyn from like years ago, and he attempts to like run, but he just can't. He just doesn't have the fitness or the energy. And Karen's like, step on it to like the guy, but he's like, I don't think you have to really worry about him getting away. So they catch up to Sergey, and he's in the car with them, and obviously they plan to get information out of him. They start questioning him, and that's when the whole plan begins to unravel what Villeneuve is up to, because we see her, she's disguised as a policewoman, so she's on like a motorbike, and she like rides up to the car, and she pulls over, and there's like this slow motion sort of like technique. It's again really well done, really like clever sort of reveal. Sort of edge of your seat type stuff as she pulls over to the car. And I was in two minds here, because I was pretty sure she was there to kill Carolyn, but at the same time you thought, wow, this is another big death, having like swerved us with Kenny at the start of the season, where they made us think Kenny's going to be a major character this season, and then to have him killed. I mean, to kill off Caroline would be even bigger, really. But it did appear to be going that way. She shoots into the car, and then we cut to another scene, and they're in the car, and Caroline has like blood on the side of her head. She appears to be dead, but it turns out she's not. The other guy like revives her, and it turns out she's just knocked out. And they look around, and it's actually Sergey. He's been shot by Villeneuve. Sergey's dead, so obviously that's what she was in London for, to eliminate like that loose end, so that he couldn't give up any information. But it's a great scene, actually. It's a really like clever twist and reveal, because as it turns out, Villeneuve was just shooting at the window to crack the window open. And I think also the intention was to knock Caroline out, so obviously they can't stop her from killing Sergey. So the blow, it's either than she just got a slight shot to knock her out, or then maybe the glass flying in her face did that. And yeah, so she's there to kill Sergey. So that's a really clever. I like the way they did that. So there's definitely a couple of like smart reveals in this episode, at scenes where they kind of subvert what you think is going to happen. But of course, while Villeneuve's in London, the same city as Eve, she does take this opportunity to like send her messages. So it turns out earlier in the episode, in the booth, she was recording a message for Eve, and it's becoming like very much mind games at this point, because she knows where Eve is. She could go after her at any point, but that's not the mission. And I think at this point she's very much in denial. I think both sides are. I think Eve wants to stay away from Villeneuve. She kind of obviously they both have the passion and desire for each other, but obviously their professional differences doesn't really allow it, and there's certain barriers. But it seems like neither want to confront one another for similar reasons anyway. But being the twisted girl she is, Villeneuve is going to leave some messages and play with Eve anyway. So she recorded the message into like that teddy bear, and she leaves it at Eve's house, which is like really perverse. And it's like just this really like hypnotic, haunting sort of message where it keeps repeating over and again. Admit it, Eve, you wish I was here. Admit it, Eve, you wish I was here. And it takes like a few times to actually hear what it's saying, but I really like that. I really love Villeneuve just playing with Eve and messing with her. And there's really solid episode, I thought, actually. And the whole stuff with the accountant was quite intriguing, I thought. Another small bit in the episode was that Nico has discharged himself from hospital, and Eve finds this out because she's obviously still hoping they can rekindle like their relationship at some point. And she's actually told by one of the nurses that he might be in Poland. He mentioned something about going to Poland. So that's probably going to be something in the next episode where Eve tries to track him down, I think. But we'll see about that. But yeah, obviously we are going to get more Nico. And there's small bits with people like Constantine as well, and obviously Dasher gets a small bit. There's an amusing scene with a baby with Villeneuve at the beginning when she's just on her latest like hit at like this mansion type thing, and she like kills the woman she's there to kill, but then it turns out the maid's there and there's also a baby, and Villeneuve's just getting like a perverse thrill in just like playing with the maid and making her think she's gonna kill the baby. Like she just flips because she's got like this it's some sort of like sharp knife or something like that, some sort of like, I can't remember what it was exactly, but some sort of sharp objects, and she's like moving it backwards and forwards between the maid and the baby. And she has this line where she's like, "You really care for that baby, don't you? And it's not even yours." And she kills the maid, and obviously even Villeneuve wouldn't stoop to killing a baby, but then. This being Villeneuve, she doesn't just leave the baby there. She actually takes it with her, and it becomes this whole thing in the next scene with Dasher, where they're actually there with the baby, and the baby's like they're feeding the baby, that they're out at like a restaurant, and obviously, yeah, it's like this weird surreal moment where they're sort of arguing over it, and Dasher's obviously pissed that she's making life more awkward by taking this kid. And at one point, the kid like throws the food at Dasher, and Villeneuve just laughs, and Dasher then, to try and outdo her, like moves the baby, and you think this is funny? Well, watch this, and puts it in the bin basically. It'll be fine. I'm sure someone will find the baby, but more scenes of Dasher and Vilna trying to outdo each other, which is pretty funny. So another solid episode. I'm enjoying this season so far. So that's my review of Killing Eve season 3, episode 3. I'll be back soon with episode 4. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. You can also get me up on Twitter if you want to comment or ask any questions, and also ding the bell on YouTube for notifications of new videos. But I'll be back soon with more TV reviews. I'll see you guys later.